In Chapter 4, we're going to cover our first organ system, our integumentary system. We're going to talk about the classification of body membranes and then dive into the functions, structures, and appendages of our skin. The learning objectives for this first part are to list the general functions for each of our membrane types, cutaneous, mucous, serous, and synovial, and to give its location in the body, as well as compare the structure of each membrane type. The integumentary system in general is the covering, so it functions to cover our surfaces, line cavities, and form protective sheets around our organs. And it can be broken down into two groups. The epithelial membranes are cutaneous, mucous, and serous. Those are the ones we are most familiar with. But we also have connective tissue membranes, which are our synovial membranes. And body membranes are classified by the tissue that makes them up. So epithelial membranes are an epithelial sheet that have an underlying layer of connective tissue. So it's not just epithelial tissue, even though they're called epithelial membranes, it's that the bulk of them are made from epithelial tissue. And membranes are simple organs. They're organs with more than one tissue type working together. Let's start with our cutaneous membranes. This is our skin. This is the one we're going to come back to over and over again. We have a superficial epidermis made of stratified squamous epithelial cells that are keratinizing. I'll tell you what that word means in our next video. And then below that, deep to that, is our dermis, which is a dense connective tissue. The skin, the cutaneous membranes, these are dry. What we mean by that is that they're exposed to air. So you have cutaneous membranes, those are your skin. You also have mucous membranes that line the open cavities. So these are cavities that are open to our exterior, things like our nasal cavity, our mouth, our esophagus, as well as our lungs. And this is an epithelial on a loose connective tissue, so that lamina propria underlies that mucus layer. And these are considered wet membranes. The epithelial is again stratified squamous, or it could be a simple columnar epithelial, depending on its location. And it's adapted for absorption and secretion. So it wants to take things in and secrete things out. Finally, we have our serous membranes, and these line our closed cavities. So mucus line cavities that are open to the exterior. Serous membranes line cavities that are closed to the exterior. And they incorporate a layer of simple squamous epithelium resting on a thin layer of that loose areolar connective tissue. And they line most of the closed cavities except for in the dorsal body or our joints. And for our serous membranes, they have two layers to them. They've got a visceral layer and a parietal layer. The parietal layer lines the specific portion of the wall of the ventral cavity, and it will fold into itself to form the visceral layer. So if we're looking at the organ, the visceral layer is the one covering the outside of the organ, and the parietal layer is outside of that. And they're separated by a layer of thin serous fluid. Examples here are peritoneum, which lines our abdominal cavity, the pleura, which is around our lungs, or the pericardium, which is around our heart. Now, those were our epithelial membranes. Let's talk about our connective tissue membranes. And the example here is our synovial membranes. There are no epithelial cells in connective tissue membranes. Instead, it's soft areolar connective tissue by and large with some hyaline cartilage, which is also a type of connective tissue. And these are going to line the capsules surrounding our joints to provide a smooth surface and also to secrete fluid. And we'll talk about this more when we talk about joints in our skeletal unit. But what you need to know right now is that we have bursa, which are small sacs of connective tissue, as well as tendon sheaths. And again, these provide cushions that can move against each other and allow for movement. So in this video, we talked about the classification of our body membranes. And in the next video, we'll jump right into the heart of our integumentary system.